Welcome to the Zen Castle. Today we're going to uncover the truth about the belief system of Buddhism and how it's not a religion in the practical sense. This is primarily due to the fact that it lacks the formality of religious methods, rituals, and an actual God. It also does not have any faith-based dogmas, rules, nor formal sacred text. Contrary to American belief, even when speaking to most Buddhists, there is no following of a God, nor angels, or any kind of heaven. We'll speak about an alternative form of a present-day heaven later, which Buddhists call nirvana, but keep in mind that nirvana is usually confused as an afterlife experience, which is not part of the original Buddhist teaching. Also, Buddhism does not require prayer, even though some Buddhists may talk or chant to a spirit in a religious way. Unknown to them, however, this was not part of the original Buddha's instructions. The key point is that Buddhism is simply a way of life and a calm, peaceful state of being without the strict rules that a religion includes. Like Christianity, some forms of Buddhism have unfortunately transformed over the past 2 millennia to be watered-down versions of the first doctrine laid out by the original Buddha, whose first name was Siddhartha. Many times we see videos of Buddhists bowing down to a statue of Siddhartha Buddha, praying or chanting to him, and acting as most religious folks do, in awe of a mighty or heavenly being. If you're a Buddhist, you must understand your modern day practice of worshiping and bowing to the Buddha goes directly against his original teaching. He never claimed to be deity, and he never wanted to be bowed to or worshipped in any way. These are all practices that started in the mid-1700s, which we'll discuss later in this video. Incidentally, if you have a statue of Buddha in your home, it's fine. But when you start praying to that statue and asking for your desires or wishes to be fulfilled, then if the Buddha were alive today, he would stop you and say that he is just a man and not to be worshipped. This does not mean to discard any statues of the Buddha, but rather enjoy and observe them, make them a reminder to meditate. Maybe this is shocking to most viewers, but again, there is no religion associated with being a true Buddhist. In all actuality, this is an extremely unique phenomenon in the history of human consciousness and spirituality. And although you might say it is a faith-based system, it has no relationship to any formal religious system. The original Buddha wisely said that seeking any form of God is merely a search for comfort, safety, and hiding within a walled refuge. He said, you believe in God not because there is a God, but because you feel weak and vulnerable without that belief. Even if there were no God, he said you would invent one, which stems from your own weakness and fear. Your form of church or God allows you to transmit your weaknesses to a divine being for help, and that help rarely comes. If it does finally arrive, it is mostly due to your own efforts. For example, you want a spouse or a good job, and think your prayers will provide you the remedy for your situation. But the answer actually comes through your diligent efforts and hard work toward obtaining that given prize, and not necessarily through divine intervention. Translated into modern English, the Buddha calls this a desire projection. Without a formal God, it is difficult for ordinary people to find meaning in life. They have a deep feeling that life would become chaotic in the absence of God. Many times they do not even realize they have this hidden feeling deep down inside. Nonetheless, it moves them in the direction of a church or following after a God. Therefore, projection occurs, which means sending your issues and emptiness toward a heavenly being for help. This gives folks peace of mind. Just the idea of God is enough to reassure them that they are not alone, that they are cared for, that the universe is not born of chaos, but everything is God created and in order. The Lord of the universe has supposedly arranged everything perfectly, they might read in a holy book. And if properly followed, all will be well. You're taught that God helps you to live in happiness and that your situation is not accidental. Also that there is a purpose and some ultimate goal to your suffering and pain. Therefore, your holy God, regardless of the church that you attend, helps you feel secure and that a powerful being is in control of your future. I'd like to suggest that this is all an illusion. So let's review what the first Buddha taught. Incidentally, there have been several Buddhas, but we are talking about what the true origin of Buddhism is. The name of this great man, the founder of it all, who never claimed to be deity, was a Hindu prince named Siddhartha Gautama. He denounced his faith approximately 500 years before the birth of Christ. By the way, that faith was a derivation of Hinduism. Siddhartha Gautama resided near modern-day Nepal, which is in northeast India. That's right, the original Buddha was not Chinese, Vietnamese, or Japanese, contrary to popular belief. As a teenager to the king in his region, Siddhartha Gautama was never shown any suffering, aging, sickness, or death. On his first excursion from the palace, however, he accidentally encountered all three: an old man, a sick man, and a dead man. Through these signs, he realized that he too would become sick, would grow old, would die, and would lose everything he loved. He understood that life guaranteed he would suffer, and that all of life was essentially defined by suffering from either want or loss. All of life was defined by suffering from either want, desire, or loss, tragedy. In essence, the Buddha taught us that most, if not all, of life is defined by suffering from either want, loss, unfulfilled dreams, or unfulfilled desires. Shortly after his shocking discovery about suffering and death, he began following the ways of religious ascetics and tried different teachers and disciplines, but eventually attained enlightenment through his own means and became known as the Buddha, which means awakened or enlightened one. Afterwards, he taught his middle way of detachment from material objects and renunciation of life's illusions through what is called the Four Noble Truths, the Wheel of Becoming, and the Eightfold Path to Enlightenment. I remember speaking to a Buddhist about 10 years ago, but I was a devout Christian at the time. I said that it was hard for me to believe in Buddhism because there is no God within the faith. She was very quick to reprimand me and strongly said that Buddha was a deity and that Jesus studied underneath him. After she had said that, she said, if I was careful enough to do my own research, I would find out just that. The conversation ended, and I was more confused than ever about Buddhism. Incidentally, there is no sacred text describing an instructional teaching of Jesus underneath Buddha Siddartha Gautama. What I discovered later on was that this Buddhist lady was confused about her own faith. And may I say that many other Buddhists are as well. Okay, how can Jesus study underneath Buddha when Christ was not born until about 500 years after the Buddha Siddartha had passed away? Was Jesus a time traveler, or did Siddhartha become born again about 20 years before the manger scene in Bethlehem? I think not. Essentially, your religion and any relationship with a formalized God has taught you something similar to this, that your life is being remotely controlled and guided by the master of operations, by the control tower in the sky, and all you must do is read the sacred scriptures and follow what they say. God will then guide your life. May I suggest that you're being misguided? Those deceiving you are not your friends or loving priests and pastors, but your indirect enemies. Someone just said, why would you say that? I trust these church people, my pastor and my priest. How can you say that they're lying to me and leading me down a path of false beliefs? The real reason for this is because they don't know any better. It was what their forefathers taught them, and that was passed down to them through the centuries. One very realistic truth is that you're being instructed and nurtured by ancient falsehoods that have been passed down, whether deliberately taught or assimilated to you subconsciously. Now, let me say that this is not a teaching on being an atheist, in case you're wondering, nor finding any reason to shun any type of God and follow Buddha instead. Rather, this is a presentation to help you to become enlightened to an alternative that has been hidden from you and your ancestors, particularly if you've grown up in a Western culture. The point is, you need to accept the truth at all costs without trying to cover it up, polish it, or distort it to suit your religious or non-religious preferences. If this wounds your ego or offends your church leaders, then so be it. Maybe it's time to seek the true reasons why your religious prayers are rarely, if ever, answered, and your God is not necessarily in control of making your life smooth and protected. The Buddha was very dispassionate about religiosity and even careers, money, and goals, which is completely opposite to the passion of the American goal-driven society. Other than basic necessities, Buddha Siddartha allowed no room for your ambitions. He said, be more aware, be more awake, be more courageous, and do not hide behind any beliefs, doctrines, or theories. Light the inner candle, he said, to see the true nature of things clearly. And when you have the courage to accept the truth, then you will become truly content and blessed. This is the Buddha's initial teaching, that all systems of belief are harmful. All faiths are barriers to the present reality of suffering. But he was not an atheist. He was neither a theist nor an atheist, because he said this: some believe in God Others do not, but both types of people have strong beliefs. The interesting point is that although he did not believe in God, at the same time, he rejected the viewpoints of those who were atheists. He said their denial of God was like a mosquito biting an elephant's foot to try and wound it. He also said that those who were immature will go out and find another idol to replace God. We see the exact same thing in modern times with Americans, Asians, even Europeans that don't go to church. It's easy to see the idol that replaced God by looking at their checkbook or what they spend their time, their money, and their efforts on, such as activities, both outdoor and indoor entertainment. Again, your God has been replaced in the form of an idol. It is what Buddha said you spend your time doing, polishing, creating, or entertaining yourself with. The key question is, who is your true God? And if you're a churchgoer, how hypocritical is your lifestyle away from your church congregation? This is even found in the secular scientific community. Psychoanalysts, like Freud, completely abandoned the idea of God. Yet for him, the unconscious psyche became God. He said that every human action was determined by the unconscious mind, and that humans were merely puppets in the hands of their mind. Again, as the Buddha pointed out, if there is no God, then man will create one. In this case, your friend Sigmund Freud found a new label for God. He called the unconscious mind the id, or the superego, a form of deity. I say, old wine in a new wine bottle. The label's been changed. The old label of God in heaven has been removed, and a new coat of paint has been applied to deceive the unwary. But if you analyze Freud's psychology and his friend Dr. Carl Jung, you'll immediately realize that the unconscious mind plays the role that a former God once did. Whether you're talking about psychoanalysts, Darwinians, communists, or even Marxists, the overall meaning is clear. Just change the words around into another strong belief system, okay? Some may call that an ideology, and you have created a new type of idol or God, all of which is totally against what a true Buddhist believe. All of that is totally against what the original Buddha taught. So you ask yourself now, what is my ideology? What God did I replace? The Buddha taught this. Free your mind of dogma, rules, gods, desires, wishes, and idols, then you will find tranquility and contentment. Whether it's Hinduism, Islam, Sikhism, Christianity, or Judaism, the differences are only superficial. Your mind remains childish. You continuously seek the image of a father figure or someone who can explain everything, who can provide the ultimate answers. Even those that follow the metaphysical teaching of visualization and manifestation are in the same boat as these religious hypocrites. The Buddha said, I am not a metaphysician, which means he denounced metaphysics as well. He said, a mature soul does not ponder whether there are ultimate answers to the universe or not. Spiritual maturity does not ask Why do I exist? Or what is God's plan for me? Or what does the universe have in my future? That means the original Buddha sought no ultimate answers for how the universe plays things out in our lives. He never said, I have explained that mystery, or I have an answer to the meaning of life. Nor did he say, here, I have revealed the universal truth to you now, so listen. Or he never said, this is God's divine truth, the following. He never had those ultimate, universal, and spiritual and God-type answers or truths to teach others, as all the religious and even non-religious metaphysical people do. But what he did say is this, paraphrased. One thing I can do is encourage you, make you aware of reality, help you become alert so that you live your life fully conscious, mindful, filled with love, light, and awareness, even to the point where all questions dissolve. This means that the Buddha utterly rejected metaphysics, visualization, and futile attempts to manifest abundance, such as what is taught in the New Age book called The Secret. The Buddha said that metaphysics is just a futile search. Although he denied heaven, he did not deny an earthly heaven, namely nirvana. Incidentally, nirvana is not the type of heaven you are taught as a Westerner. The true Buddhist nirvana is a form of deep satisfaction on earth, not drifting off into an afterlife sanctuary of bliss. Buddha taught that it is a place or state of mind characterized by freedom from pain, worry, and the external world. The uncanny fact is that he was one of the very few people that ever fully achieved just that, nirvana on earth. The second Buddha was named Padmasan Baba, or the Guru Rinpoche, and he introduced Buddhism to Tibet in the 8th century. Why Tibet? Because it's conveniently connected to the east side of Nepal, if you look at a map. Both the first and second Buddha founding fathers said the same thing regarding what most believe to be heaven. They said, paraphrased from ancient Indian Sanskrit, your heaven is simply your unfulfilled desires and your unachieved wishes, which you project or visualize onto an invisible space, a spiritual force, and even a hopeful afterlife. I'd suggest you compare that 2,500-year-old teaching of how the world views heaven to your own personal views. Maybe your Jewish church, your Bible, or even your Quran. True nirvana, again, is much different than this, which is an amazing place we can discover without having to wait many years for death, through mindfulness and meditation. I much rather see heaven here and now through the proper meditative training than needing to wait for a supposedly real or imagined afterlife that I've prayed 50 years in vain for. So please allow me to paraphrase nirvana again in the words of the original Buddha Siddartha. It is a form of deep satisfaction today, not a drifting off into an eternal sanctuary of bliss. It is a place or state of mind characterized by freedom from pain, worry, and the external world. What most people believe is far from this profound Buddhist truth. The point is, what is unfulfilled in this life, you visualize and project onto the next hopeful life. A key takeaway here is that whether your dreams or desires are for the present life or the next one, those wishes have little, if any, difference. They are still a yearning and a desire that will cause you stress. All of what we yearn for, desire, or wish for is an elusive projection we knowingly or subconsciously send upwards to God or a universal spirit in the form of meditation. But it's mainly fruitless because it's all ambition or goal-driven. As a reminder, any ambitious goals were not part of the roots of Buddhism. They were introduced in the 18th to 19th centuries by other Buddhist master teachers that were trying to be scholarly and come up with doctrine. Again, the Buddha had no doctrine. These Buddhist priests in the 1700s through the 1800s therefore created goals to fulfill their desires. They disguised them, however, behind wanting a spouse, children, or sustenance to pay for food and shelter. Regardless of the label, both the second Buddha, Guru Rinpoche, or the original Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, would shun modern-day Buddhism and its religious-based goal setting or prayers for wants and desires. Just a cursory understanding of the human condition shows us how very few people are ever satisfied in life like the original Buddhas were. In fact, everyone spends their life trying to fulfill their desires, but how many are content with what they achieve? The answer is very few actually are. So they project those desires into the future. Intense hope or desire by its very nature is insatiable, whether now or in any future heaven. You achieve one desire, then you instantly visualize the next. You earn $60,000 a year, then you desire $90,000 a year. The Buddha said the nature of desire is to be unsatisfiable. No matter what you do, you will not be satisfied. That's the intrinsic nature of desire. Desire will never be fulfilled. Even sitting under the ancient Indian, Nepalese magic tree won't satisfy you or get you any closer to heaven. The cycle of desire just continues in an endless loop. This is why the original form of true Buddhism is essential for contentment in life. It wipes away wants and desires. The heavens, or any scriptural writing of heaven, which are found within Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Shintoism, even Hinduism, are just projected desires, unfulfilled wishes, or hopeful future dreams. These heavenly visions may console or satisfy many churchgoers who believe that if not satisfied in this life, God will do so in the next. One might ask, why all churches, faiths, corporate jobs, and even marriages have the origins of either non-spiritual or religious goal setting or wish fulfillment? Is there not a better way, which is to release your issue, your desire, clear your mind of it, then forget about any desired future outcome to that wish, all of which are the root elements of what was taught by the first and second Buddha. So to reiterate, original Buddhism is not a Chinese, Japanese, or even Vietnamese religious practice. Again, it's a belief system of mental clarity and peace, of mindfulness. Buddhism is also a pure and dedicated relationship with the universe, but not with being into metaphysics at the same time, okay? It's a relationship with the universal energy, with chi, maybe even with chakras. It's a state of being without ritual or religion. Getting back to the concept and belief of someday going to heaven, as most churches will teach, this supposed gift of heaven must wait until the afterlife because the deceitful church clergy can't fool you in this life. They know wishes and desires are insatiable, so they invented the afterlife. They know that prayers usually do not get answered. If your prayer somehow does get answered, your clergy and fellow parishioners will create a series of events to prove God answered your prayer, even if you did all the work to get that spouse, that car, or that high-paying job. There are even parents that imprint this falsehood of heaven in a visual way to their young children. The kids then start walking around with visions of angels and God sitting on the throne watching and protecting them. We also get books and movies on this subject, sometimes just paraphrased visions of children, all used to deceive the masses and comfort us into believing everything will be all right someday, but not in this life. Other than fictitious books and movies, no one has ever seen heaven. Therefore, it's easy to console the churchgoer into believing that if not now, by some future day, maybe even if you need to wait until death, God will truly make you happy. They might even refer you to some scripture written 2,000 years ago that says exactly that same thing. So, the church says, it will happen after this life. But in the meantime, you have to suffer more and more. But God sees your suffering, they say, and all will be well someday, they might say. Please allow me to add a little opinion here, and that there is a very strong possibility that the original versions of the Bible might be truthful. Okay? I'll grant you that. Along with how they recorded God or heaven. In fact, remember the Buddha said trying to deny God is like a mosquito trying to injure an elephant. I believe that if Buddha and Jesus were to meet, for example, it's almost guaranteed they would embrace and there would be great mutual love. That said, I also strongly believe that the Bible has been diluted, overly rewritten, and wrongly translated badly for 2,100 years. And what we have today could very well be highly incorrect. Sadly, that incorrect scripture is the current foundation for what folks may be falsely believing in today. Now, there are Jewish rabbis or Christian pastors that might be listening all over the country that will deny that. They'll say everything we have today is essentially what was written 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. They'll chant the Bible is true and inerrant or without errors. But, my friend, if you logically contemplate and understand the passing of time, language translations, supposed Bible scholars adding or deleting canonical books, which are Bible books, small epistles, for example, found in the Bible, those are canonical books. Let me go back and read that again. If you logically contemplate and understand the passing of time, language translations, supposed scholars adding or deleting canonical books, and scores of other interpretations and misinterpretations, you'll soon realize this is all one big illusion to comfort you into believing that your scriptures, whether it's the Bible or something else, are perfectly true and correct. I'd like to suggest there's an extremely possibility they are not. One question to all official church leaders listening might be, have you ever heard the part about God being all-knowing, omniscient, and all-powerful, omnipotent? Why can't your all-knowing and omnipotent God satisfy your desires right now? Why can't your God create the outcome you truly need right now? Why can't your God do anything while people are still alive and only promises a future heaven where your wishes and dreams are fulfilled, where your suffering is wiped out? If the divine, whether it's a he, she, or it, can't do anything now, what guarantee is there that they will be able to do anything in the afterlife? Because of these questions being exposed to a logical thinker, folks are running away from traditional churches or so-called priests, pastors, and preachers, and seeking spiritual alternatives such as metaphysics or Buddhism. The Buddha said, look into the nature of desire. Observe the moment of desire because it can be subtle. You will realize two things. One is that desire can never be satisfied. And second, once you understand that desire can never be satisfied, it will disappear and you will no longer crave it. He was teaching that by discarding wants and desires, you will achieve both stillness and liberation from worry. That is the true state of satisfaction. The key point is that desires can only be satisfied by transcending satisfaction, going beyond that hope or dream, even discarding it. And when you understand that, there will be transformation. Desire will vanish without a trace. And when there is no more desire, no more needs, you will be satisfied and content in life. How many people have the mental capacity and willpower to do just that? Very few. They say less than 1% of the population are true, original Buddhists. May I be so bold as to say and ask, what does your religion actually teach? In essence, it teaches that desire indeed can be satisfied sometime soon, but if not in this life, in the heavenly afterlife. You'll be healthy in heaven, for example, they might say. You'll be able to walk again in heaven. You won't have pneumonia in heaven. You won't look old in heaven, okay? It's always in the heavenly afterlife. There is only a minor difference between atheists, psychoanalysts, scientists, and religious hypocrites. All have wants and desires, all suffer and stress out over those unfulfilled desires. All will never be satisfied in this life. The Buddha says that the holy hypocrites and the corporate scientist atheists are birds of a feather. There's no difference at all. Their attitudes and approaches are exactly the same. Everyone seeks to fill desires, dreams, and wishes. And if they can't achieve them now, listen, they create a fictional place for the grand finale of wish fulfillment. Remember, one of the key teachings of the Buddha was that he said, abandon hope and eliminate desire, then peace arrives. Someone listening just said, What did you and your Buddha just say, man? To abandon any hope I have and eliminate all my desires and wants? Who do you think you are, coming into my home and telling me to do the opposite of what I've been taught to do all my life? In fact, I teach my kids to have goals and dreams and to never give up on them. My reply to that impolite person would be this: calm down, my friend. Realize peace in your mind, which is what the Buddha would probably say. The goal is to not give you frustration and disbelief about how you were tricked or deceived from a youth. Rather, we're trying to get everyone to understand that by abandoning hope, like the Buddha said, and desires, you will finally achieve happiness and nirvana on earth, which is exactly what you've been attempting to do all your life. Only it was the wrong approach. Maybe it's time for a new approach, I say, one that actually works without deceiving you in the process. You see, the point Buddha was trying to make is simply this: when there is no more hope and desire, you're sent back to the present moment. When you're not striving to fulfill a goal, your mind relaxes, mindfulness awakens, and your life improves. Another key point is, when you no longer desire anything, you will be satisfied because you are no longer deceived by the trappings of striving toward a goal or wishing for a dream to someday happen. Now, this teaching will truly anger the vast majority of successful people. In fact, the highest ranking men of Buddha's day did exactly what they did to Jesus, only less severe and without the crucifixion. During that time, the time of the Buddha, they were called Brahmins. Okay, during the time of Jesus, they were called Pharisees, of course, but toward Siddhartha Gautama, their goal was to eradicate the Buddha's teaching in India, and they succeeded. Buddhism then vanished and migrated north and to the east toward modern-day Tibet, and eventually spread from there. In the country of India, it was largely replaced with Hinduism and Sikhism because, unsurprisingly, Hinduism is one of the most materialistic religions in the world. They are tricky, like the Christians, and disguise their deep desire or goal with a wrapping paper of prayer, religious practice, or rituals to any particular god. Regardless of how any religious person disguises the need for you to fulfill dreams, fulfill desires, you can call them prayers if you want, but regardless of the wrapping paper, they boil down to the same thing. The hypocrisy, the hypocrisy, you might say, associated with getting your prayer answered. The hypocrisy of getting your desire satisfied or your dream realized. It's all an illusion, one that gives false hope. For example, a Hindu might not realize this, nor an ancient Jew, but with every ritual comes a hidden desire. They might chant, "Grant us abundance, grant us more children, better crops, give us a good family, favorable winds, successful work, great health, and a long, prosperous life," which is the type of prayer almost every religion or religious person around the world will repeat. But it's just a subconscious way of desiring and hoping. Again, an illusion to comfort you, comfort those with a weak mind. Said in a different way, any form of wish or prayer is essentially just magnified desires which cause both stress and false hopes in a potential outcome. You see, whether you're Muslim, Islamic, Judaism, a Jew, Hinduism, a Christian, Christianity, or Shintoism, I can name 15 more faiths. I'd like to ask, what kind of relationship is this with any God? What kind of religion is this, I ask, that is so focused on disguised materialism, disguising wishes and desires, okay, or wishing for abundance? May I be so bold as to say that it's even absurd to call it a religion. The Buddha Siddartha studied with many spiritual teachers while seeking and achieving enlightenment. But each time he left empty-handed because he knew none of these faith-based teachers truly understood what desire is and the nature of that desire. They all harbored plenty of desires. Of course, back in those days, their desires were sometimes projected far into the future, right? Into the next life. But the object of desire was the same. The only difference was the timeline. Desire, holy or otherwise, is still desire. These were the same people who tortured themselves. Some fasted for months, others stood in the same spot for weeks. Some never slept and became living skeletons. Here's something the Buddha is trying to teach us all, that only fools seek glory and riches and comfort and heaven in this current life, okay, or the supposed future life. Because in your last days on a deathbed, you end up with nothing. There is also no guarantee of heaven. Although it's a long shot, you might arrive at your form of heaven, or you might end up dissolved into a universal oblivion. That is why the Buddha did not teach about a future glorious nirvana or heaven where all your tears would be wiped away, where you would get all of your desires fulfilled and you will commune with angels. In fact, he did not even believe in any afterlife heaven. Okay, that's very contrary to how Westerners view Buddhism. But he didn't believe in any afterlife heaven, even reincarnation. Not that he did not, okay, let's go back to in fact. In fact, he did not even believe in any afterlife heaven. Not that he did not believe in bliss. No, he believed in happiness, but it was within the present life. It was through releasing desire and forgetting about hopes and goals. The revelation is when all desires have vanished, bliss bursts forth from the deepest core of your being. Nirvana demands nothing. No need for merits, no need for holiness, no need for offerings, just understanding and experiencing the internal clarity is enough, especially when it's mindful, peaceful, and void of wishes. The Buddha stated that the idea of the eternal soul has been misunderstood also. You exist, but you do not have a true, permanent inner self. He taught impermanence, and that you exist, but you're not separate from the universe, okay? Your impermanence is part of the eternality found in the cosmos. The Buddha said existence is oneness. Look up the law of entanglement, for example, or how we are connected to all things through entangled energy. Some folks call that dark energy. The Buddha said there are no boundaries. No one is separate from one another. We're all interconnected. We live in an ocean of consciousness, and we belong to a collective consciousness. We err when we delude ourselves into believing we have separate souls and have a special, eternal, and personal role to play. We are deceived by the boundaries of our mind and past ideologies. Because of your physical body and the incorrect doctrine within your human mind, you place a special purpose and identification on both your body and mind. In this example, it's the soul. Therefore deluding yourself into thinking you are separate from others, that you are someone special, and that God has a specific role for you to play in heaven. So, if Buddhism is not a religion, and there is no soul, and the Buddha also said there is no belief in God, the inner self being eternal, or even an eternal heaven, then what did he teach about this eternal soul? Was it reincarnation, as most Westerners believe? No, think again. The Buddha did not teach you die and come back as a goat if you were bad, or a princess if you were good in this life. No, that is Hindu or Sikh teaching, not Buddhism. This is widely misinterpreted, in the West, that all Buddhists are hoping that good karma will reincarnate them into royalty. True Buddhists, however, might often speak of rebirth. If there is no soul or permanent self, then what is this rebirth? Well, think of a born-again Christian, and you might get the idea. Again, it's all related to this present life. You are reborn to new ideas, new ways of being, such as discarding your fruitless striving toward goals and desires. The Buddha said, you can change your life without needing to rely on religious belief. He said the first step is to abandon beliefs. Metaphysics and doctrines start from zero, with no philosophy, no ideology. Start with emptiness. That's the only way to reach the truth, and the only way to achieve clarity and bliss in your mind and innermost being. I can remember when I think back to my youth until I was about age 40, I was a churchgoer, and sometimes when I wasn't too hypocritical, I could have been labeled a real good Christian, an example of a faithful follower of God. Through the years, however, time and time again, I can also remember my prayers rarely were answered. And when they were, everyone around me explained how God answered my prayer. They said, you drove down this street, and then you'd made that left, and you went up the other avenue, and that's why you avoided that accident. That's why you got to work on time. That's why you got the better job. And the interesting point is that the people that hurt me the most were those same fellow believers that would describe how wonderful God was, and how my prayers got answered, and how his promises are great, and how powerful he is, and how he's working in my life. But at the same time, they would be the ones that would rip me off when I'd ask them to come to my house to do some construction work, for example. Okay, we're all reading from the same holy book, I would think, but also breaking the same laws that we were supposed to follow from the scriptures, that we had held in such high regard. The Buddha said, all your scriptures are just dreams, instincts, greed, lust, and holy anger. They are just creations of the clergy and of your mind. So they must bear the trace elements of a selfish or covetous mind that seeks desire. Scriptures are in essence a man-made product, the Buddha taught. But the funny part of this is that all religions try to prove that their holy scripture is not a product of man, that it was breathed through God's mouth. Like my former self, Christians say God authored the Bible by inspiring the prophets. and the 10 Commandments were spoken or given directly to Moses by God. Hindus also say the Vedas are not a product of man, and the story repeats. Muslims say the Quran was read to Muhammad by God, and Mormons say that their holy pearl of great price was written by an angel or given to Joseph Smith, who stood in the presence of an inspiring angel. The list of examples goes on and on. They are all supposedly holy books written by either God, angels, or men that sat with God or angels. If you ponder this logically, if you think as a realist here, you'll eventually realize it's all a big holy scam. Maybe one to inspire you to donate more. Again, the Buddha taught that all scriptures are inspired not by God, but by a man or a group of men conspiring together, such as in the case of 70 scholars approving or disapproving certain books of the English or King James Bible. Here is something very interesting. The Buddha also taught not to identify with any nationality, race, religion, or sexual ideology. Try teaching that nowadays with the identity politics and wokeism that folks must accept and comply with. May I say that the Buddha was simply a beacon of his own life and of truth. And his teachings were the purest forms and messages of truthful living. This is the reason why there is an amazing resurgence and growth in the true forms of Buddhism, one that is not based on scripture or holy doctrine. By the way, there are about 4 or more versions of Buddhism, okay? 2 or 3 of which even use scriptures in their teachings. If you remember what I was talking about in the 1700s and 1800s, those Buddhist masters created scriptures. But today, we are talking about the roots and the origin of the original Buddha, the original form of Buddhism. If there is any one modern day equivalent to the original version taught by Buddha Siddartha, it would be today's Japanese version, namely Zen Buddhism. Here's another one of Buddha's simple and practical teachings. Driven by selfish desires, people chase after fame and wealth. Regardless of the end goal, a desire is always selfish. Whether your desire helps or harms others, you have done what is needed to satisfy that want. You have grunted toward its fulfillment. You are said to be selfish if you only care about yourself. But when Buddha speaks of selfish desires, he means if a desire is based on a goal that is even projected toward someone else, then it's still a desire, such as your hope they will sell you something at a discount, or even hoping your son graduates college with great grades. No matter how it is viewed, any and all goals and desires are selfish and must be eliminated to realize bliss, nirvana, mental clarity, and comfort. Even philanthropy is based on selfishness, believe it or not, and outward appearances. If you think that giving so much money to charity will earn you merit and heavenly rewards, that's selfish desire. It harms no one, and in fact, you are appreciated by everyone in the community. You're seen as a generous philanthropist, a virtuous or somewhat holy and compassionate person. But Buddha would judge that generous person. That's right. He would question if that desire to give is selfish based on its motive, okay? He always looked at the motives of the heart, such as these philanthropists. Their motives may be recognition, okay, or a tax write-off. Even if your donation, listen, is to help build a new children diabetes center for healing, or a new geriatric center for cancer, he'd ask, was your donation, was your charitable efforts, was your philanthropy motivated by desire to be recognized as the city's greatest philanthropist? Were you motivated to get a big tax deduction? Regarding selfishness, the Buddha often told his disciples, even if you become happy when you meditate in your mindfulness, it's important that after meditating, give back what you've received. Return it to the universe. He'd say, if you feel blissful, direct it toward the universe. Remember the entangled energy of the universe. Some would even call that in the scientific community Higgs field. He'd say, return it to the universe, that collective consciousness. He'd say, if you feel blissful, direct it toward the universe and don't keep it as a treasure. If you feel happy, share it immediately. Don't cling to it, or else your meditation is just an act of the ego and the fulfillment of a desire to achieve bliss. You see, the ultimate goal of meditation is to discard the self, clear the mind, okay, which is to aid in the disappearance of the internal ego or even any spiritual motives. So a question you might have is, should we hope and pray for anything at all? Is it all just a waste of time? A true Buddhist master would tell you that your prayers are based on worries or wishes. They are fruitless and a deception. The Buddha taught not to worry about the outcome, for it will happen on its own. All you need to do is follow the path that the universe unfolds. You don't even need a reason to seek the outcome. Just release and let go of the desire. Maybe not immediately, but if you practice this, in time you will see that all your striving, wishing, and desire-based prayers were made in vain. And as a true Buddhist, your life is now becoming more enjoyable, and mainly because you don't care about something you may or may not attain someday. Buddha said, reach the state of no self. In that exact state of being, the being of no self, then there will be no worries about death. Striving for a dream, and there will be no suffering. Which means that when you discard that self-identity, and all its associated wants, then you will not need fame, money, riches, power, or reputation. Nirvana will then unfold before you during your time of meditation. If you are happy within, you won't care about fame, friends, or wealth. Only the unhappy seek glory. If you know who you truly are in the universe, why does it matter if others know or respect you? But if you do not know who you are and are discontent within, you will want others to recognize you. This is why everyone today is glued to social media. It's because they desire and demand to be known, loved, and recognized. They collect opinions from others, and from those opinions, they create a self-image. Okay? They'll say, yeah, that's me. People say I'm smart, so I must be smart. They like the way I look, so I must be attractive to the public. Deep within, you're not quite sure, but others help you identify who you are or want to become. The Buddha finds all of this as foolish practices, the way of lonely people without inner strength. Ironically, all the social media followers, trendsetters, actors, or anyone in any form of social group is an indirect beggar, always seeking, wanting something from another. Okay, they are all seeking or looking for validation, but it never satisfies them. Again, it's a total sham, a total deception. A man meets a woman and says, "You are so beautiful, so sweet." She responds, "I have never met anyone as handsome and strong as you." This is a mutual deception. The new couple might call it love, but the Buddha would call it mutual deceit. Both desire qualities, okay, in life for a partner, and both seem to satisfy each other at first glance. Everything appears fine until one of them tires, gets mad, or does not want to play that deceitful game anymore and seeks someone else. Then the honeymoon is over. Then the harmony dissipates. All of a sudden, the deception is revealed, and that woman is not so beautiful and sweet after all, and the man is no longer that strong, sexy, and handsome hunk. Psychologists observe that when people feel powerless, they seek symbols of desire to compensate, such as a sexy partner in life. When feeling powerless, one might want something beautiful, a car, or a wife to compensate for that emptiness. As an example, an older man like myself wants the fastest sports car in the city. His sexual potency, not mine, but his sexual potency has waned, so he replaces it with something else. He feels exhilarated as the muscle car speeds, as if in the arms of a lover. Speed gives him power. He identifies with the car's beauty and the rush of that experience. Psychologists have also observed for years that those with an inferiority complex always have great ambitions, and it's usually because they feel others are much smarter or clever than them. These are the doctors, real estate tycoons, lawyers, politicians, CEOs, or aircraft pilots of the world. High-ranking members of society are typically people that want to prove their superiority because they cannot live with the feeling of inferiority. What I am saying truthfully, okay? Truthfully saying is what the Buddha taught. What you lack inside, you will gather from the outside to compensate. If there is no lack within you, then you will relax in your bliss. Only then can you see your true beauty. Only then can you know the true wonder of who you are, a being of light and love. If someone has lived in a state of this blissful light and love, not being deceived by dreams and desires, then they are growing older in the right way, in a relaxed way, as they embrace the release of all wishes or hopes. This is when they truly become more innocent. In old age, even death, they are even more beautiful than as a child. On rare occasions, you may see an old person who looks more attractive in old age than when they were a youth. It's because they set their mind the right way. It's because they discarded all desire after they realized how detrimental it was. When you see someone like this, I say honor them, bow to them, because they have lived a true life, a life full of inner richness and peace. Like them, if you live as a true Buddhist and a spiritual being without desires and wants, then as you age, a phenomena occurs. You become more magnificent, and a radiant grace starts to surround you. An aura appears around your luminous and happy being, and at the same time, you become a temple of absolute contentment and eternal love. Someone that has finally figured out how to act and live on earth in the ways of the Buddha.